Hello, I'm Robert Baines. I've been a goldsmith and jeweller and storyteller for some years. This exhibition really is about time in one way, because it begins with very early pieces in the 60s and finishes with most recent pieces in 2050, the year 2050.
Hello, I'm Kelly Gellatly. I'm an independent curator and writer, and I've had the pleasure of working with Robert Baines for a number of years. And we're sitting here today in this very beautiful exhibition, BAINZ JEWLZ, which is a survey of Robert's practice. So we probably should start with the fact that we're at RMIT.
Yeah.
You've got a long history with RMIT. Tell us a little bit about.
Well, I guess it's the beginnings, gold and silver smithing department, and having a 3-year diploma program. And but it's funny, I'm back at RMIT. I had a wonderful teacher, Wolf Wenrick, who's a goldsmith, and I had a wonderful silversmithing lecturer, Chris McWaters, and I had a very broad education. And this just gave me a catapult. But the one significant thing was that I discovered a medieval goldsmith, Theophilus Presbyter. And this was a sort of a way of, there's a reverence, a spirituality in this, and this I've carried away. It carried right into the future. It's carried me with my subjects that I took on. But initially, when I left RMIT Gold and Silver Smithing, I worked in diamond jewellery workshops. The granulation, the archaeometallurgy, this sort of research in ancient gold came from that granulation Theophilus Presbyter period. And so that was really important. I worked as in an orthodox way as a goldsmith, silversmith, right up till 1994, 95. And then I made a big departure, and I wanted to make subject-based work. And red became my subject, not the colour of red, but the condition of red. Then I was given the catalogue of Klaus Oldenburg, the wonderful contemporary artist in America, from America, and in that catalogue he said that red is redder than green, it is meaner than yellow, and bloodier than black. And so he was talking about the condition of red. And so I projected this further for the next 15 years or so, you know, where I'm still subject to the condition of red, but other manifestations. And so that's, most of these pieces have some sort of connection with red.
It's interesting because we hear a lot of people talk about jewellery, which is absolutely right, as a form of connection and belonging. But for you, jewellery is also a form of storytelling. And before we get onto that, you mentioned something that probably a lot of people don't know, which is archaeometallurgy.
Oh, yes.
Could you explain to us what that is and how that informs your practice? And then let's have a chat about storytelling.
Okay. Well, archaeometallurgy is really the study of ancient metal artefact. But my archaeometallurgy inquiry was about Bronze Age gold manufacture. And in it I found there is an intensity of working. There is a very fine scale, there's an intricacy and a complexity which I love. There is a strategy of working that it gave me, that this sort of prefabrication of complex pieces and bringing them together, making a multiple complex, you know, a magnum opus piece. So this really, this was my passion. It was right down my street.
Your fascination with authenticity, sort of fakes and forgeries, Does that come about because of the time you spent at the Met and the fact that in replicating those techniques, you can almost be a master forger if you so chose?
Yeah, of course, of course. This was a wonderful, I had an opportunity to select any pieces that I chose in the Greek and Roman department or in Egyptian, ancient Near Eastern. I could select pieces and make copies. The copies were for three purposes. The copies were to inform the museum about their work, and the second was it built a knowledge. Increased the knowledge base for conservators and historians. And the third was that I was making and testing copies. The museum, you know, they are always confronted by the question of, is it important to have an authentic material cultural history? And you know, they wrestle with this. And so it's a beautiful question, and I thought, I can play with this. I can play with history. I can draw people in and make accurate pieces, and yet it's subverted in some way by the inclusion of something that's not part of that orthodoxy. And so the material scientist, you know, they say, oh yes, this is authentic. The historian says, no, there is this red plastic in this object, you know, red Coca-Cola can. Yeah, exactly. Events in popular culture, is it true? I made the material evidence that it was true. And this jewellery artefact became the material evidence that these stories are true.
So you can come to this exhibition and you will see, for example, the ring that Marilyn Monroe gave to JFK.
To Jack, with love.
Yes. Moon rocks.
Moon rocks, Buzz Aldrin.
But I'd say to any audience member, check your dates when you're reading the labels. Think about history.
Yeah.
You keep viewers on their toes, don't you?
But they're thinking about jewellery too.
Exactly.
And they're thinking about this history is not, this is historically a bit fuzzy. I can work on a large scale. I can make virtuoso pieces on a large scale. So this is where I'm going. This is where I go. And the larger than life pieces is the last group really. And the last piece, which is in the show, is this three spheres and the collision of ideas. In the Gallery 3, with the Ghent altarpiece. It's not about the Ghent altarpiece, but it's about the jewellery. There's a wonderful jewellery in this beautiful panel. There's multiple panels. And so I played with the jewellery and the idea, the images of the jewellery and its context on the wearer, and I built a book.
Here at RMIT you have taught hundreds of students and you're one of those great jewellers in our city that makes Melbourne one of the major jewellery centres of the world. To all of those students who are sort of starting out now or have been going a few years, what would you advise them?
You have to have the passion. You have to find something, do something, find something that has a bit of interest, intrigue, and to drill in. There will be a harvest. You will find there will be fruit there on the tree, I think.
But your passion too is inspiring, so yeah, I'm sure you've inspired many students.
Oh, well, I hope so. I hope so.
Well, this show is one, important tribute to what you've achieved, but you're also an OAM and you were announced a few years ago as a living national treasure.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
Well, they both feel strange because it's very nice to receive these things. The Order of Australia was not anticipated at all, and it came out of the blue. They're lovely accolades, but there's really good makers everywhere. There's good makers everywhere. And I've told the students, I've continued to tell the students over the years, there is room for everyone. And as a teacher, I've earnestly believed that. And I never said it just as encouragement, I believe it. But you have to pursue, you have to find that passion, you have to find your subject, you have to find the doorway and go in and give it everything, you know?
Well, it's about finding your own unique language, isn't it? Because you couldn't but sit in this gallery and not know it's your work. And it couldn't be anyone else's work.
Yeah, you have to build a vocabulary, your language for you. Leaving the orthodoxy of making and panel beating of the tea sets and all this sheet metal work. The orthodoxy is gone, and I was aware of the wire in the Bronze Age gold manufacture, Etruscan works, 7th century BC, and that was so easy to apply. And then I saw the Chinese wire work and this amazing intricacy and complexity. Historians used to talk about, in Cellini's treatise, he talks about filigree as it brings water to your eyes. I think they liked it.
I'm also fascinated, Robert, about, with any artist, the notion of failure. Because it's so...
Notion of failure?
Well,
you mean failure in practice or failure in making?
Failure in making. So much of this is about pushing through when things don't go right, I imagine. How do you do that? Does it ever get any easier?
Well, Kelly, you know artists are the most courageous people.
I agree.
Because most of the work is speculative. They're people in the community that have decided their lives this is what they're going to do. You know, you can have a philosophy of making, a strategy of working, but there's always serendipitous things happen. And it's in that, either working within the rules, or working outside the rules.
Well, it's also about parameters, isn't it? That most artists place parameters around what they're doing. And they're not rules, they're just, as you say, they're a kind of structure. But it's also being open to what can happen both within and outside of that structure, or otherwise you're just producing the same thing over and over
that's
again.
right,
And no one could ever accuse you of doing that, Robert.
There's a beauty in the labour intensity, I must say. It's almost, for me, it's like a prayer. It's a sort of a worthyship, a worship, you know. And it's not struggling. It's a joy, you know, and it's a pathway, and you just slowly put things together, and you have strategies of working. You do things independently, like the prefabrication of the Greek gold work, you know, and so the ancient still informs the present. The Schatzkammer, a treasury of evidence, really that room is of 3 exhibitions, 3 groups of work that I've shown in Europe and America. It's been touring in those places. It's really about building material evidence of some event or some saying, making jewellery that's the material evidence that these stories are true. The archaeometallurgy is in Gallery 2, which I think it's really a lovely representation of the research I have done in Bronze Age gold manufacture and the testing of ideas. Archaeometallurgy, it has to be premised on using the known technology of the era, and that's expansive for scholars, but it's also an opportunity to play with ideas as a goldsmith, to play with history and to bring the history into another historical period or context, or bring it into the future.
I hope people will come and see this wonderful exhibition, BAINZ JEWLZ. It's on at RMIT Gallery until the 22nd of November.